What's going on, guys? Less than 16 hours since Brighter Shores released, and shit is already blowing up. The game's gone from mostly positive last night after I finished playing to waking up this morning, and it's currently sitting at mixed and probably trending towards negative. So I wanted to put out a quick video, just going over my thoughts last night playing, and also people have some big concerns now that people are starting to hit the second episode where, your combat stats are resetting to zero, and, the gear that you've attained can't be used in the new biome and everything like that. So kind of just want to go through that, tell you guys what my thoughts are. And yeah, we'll go from there. The first things first, I want to go through the reset when you go to the next area. Basically, for those of you who don't know, in area one, you're going through, you're doing combat, and you're leveling up what's called a guard profession. You also have other professions around the area, so fishing, apothecary, foraging, cooking, things like that, right? And that whole area is classed as episode one. But I do think we're being a bit too critical with it all. I think the thing that people have to remember is, you wouldn't ever make a game where you have these new areas and all of a sudden it kind of all resets and it's all for nothing. It's just like, oh, well, we're just going to reset your character for the hell of it. There's usually going to be a purpose with things. And if I was to take a guess, if you look through some of your professions, like if you look at some of the end skills in a lot of your professions, you'll see that there's actually multi skills that are needed. If we take a look at this one, make a brush shoot, it looks like some kind of basket or whatever have you. And as you can see, you're going to need to have 133 wood cutting or whatever it's called in this game, and then 98 apothecary to make it. And then you can create these baskets, which I'm assuming you can then probably stash your potions in, and it kind of saves on storage space or something like that, right? So, to summarize, apothecary is again episode one, first biome. Wood cutting is episode two, that's your second biome. So it's using the two different abilities to create this thing from two different areas, right? And there's also, another one here, mine dust. So again, you can sort of see that you need to have 119 of this combat level here, and then you also need to have 170 apothecary. Sitting there going, holy fucking shit, those levels seem really high. Yeah, max level is 500. So I guess these are, kind of still about mid-game levels. So, kind of thinking about it logically, I do think it will all intertwine. I definitely think, we can almost say with absolute certainty that it's not like you're just going to be a one and done with one area. I don't think this world is progressive where, this is the starting area and then you kind of move on to the next area and you never go back to the starting area. If you look at RuneScape, it's also not like that. You start off at Lumbridge, that's the starting area. And then most people will then move up to Varrock or Draenor Village or something like that. And it's not like you never come back to Lumbridge again, literally one of the best diaries in the game, the elite Lumbridge diaries. You can then use fairy rings without the fairy ring stuff, so it's very much in this guy's philosophy, I think, with game design to shy away from how other MMOs do it, where, you have low level mobs in one area and you progress past that and then you never go back to it again. I think he likes to intertwine his worlds where the entire world is always relevant and usable, which makes sense. Again, most of you are probably thinking, okay, so, wood cutting, apothecary, we need levels in both and we can make an item for it. Cool, that makes sense. What about the combat skill though? What about me getting level 60 guard level and then I go to a new biome and that resets and now I can't use any of my gear? Well, this game is it doesn't really give you combat levels. So it's not really like that in my opinion. A guard level isn't a combat level. You don't level up guard skill and you're all of a sudden doing more attack damage and more critical strikes or anything like that. I think you do get health with it. And your guard level does affect what gear you can wear. So you have, in the first biome area, a lot of the gear that drops, you need a guard level to use that gear. Um, but outside of that, that's, it just affects, it's kind of like a Slayer level, really. It just affects what monsters you can fight. And that's it. And so if you think about it, it's really just, it's a skill purely for that area. If I'm level 200 guard, I can attack all these monsters in this biome, and I can get all these sort of, these item drops, whatever the loot tables are looking like and everything. I have access to all that. But when I go to the next biome, I need a different skill to have access to all those things under that hierarchy. So they're kind of two different trees. Um, Now, as far as items go, I've, I'm drawing a blank with what it's called, but you take them to that. I think it's called like tuning or something like that. Some of the items need to be tuned, and so you take them to this obelisk. How the fuck you say it? And you put your item there, and you tune it up, and now I don't know, it's more powerful. But that tuning process locks it to the area. There's plenty of gear that drops that doesn't need to be tuned as well. And so you can kind of imagine, like, you may get a really cool legendary drop and it doesn't need to be tuned. And maybe you need to have 80 guards who use it. But nothing's stopping you from using that in the next biome. You can still use that 80 guard armor at the next biome so long as it hasn't been tuned to episode one. You can definitely see how it'll get a little bit messy. By no means am I sort of saying it's a fantastic system on that, but just kind of logically in my mind thinking about it, that's how I look at it. Now, what is the biggest concern for me though is combat, and this is probably the biggest part where I think the game will fall over. So Andrew Gower, yes, he's the creator of RuneScape, but I think one thing that people might be missing a little bit is he left he stopped making RuneScape in 2011. For those of you who didn't play RuneScape originally or who have maybe forgotten, RuneScape pre 2011 was a very basic game. It's very different to how it is now. Um, like it was very much a click style combat, just the way Brighter Shores is. Like for those of you, I'm sure everyone kind of remembers hitting Lumbridge for the first time. You get your armor, you go over to goblins, and you'll just click the goblin. You'll do an attack, the goblin does an attack, and so on. And even with the tick system, really the sort of limit of it all was you have a scimitar. Scimitar attacks faster. You have a long sword. It's kind of like your normal attack speed, and then you would have two-handed weapons, which were again one tick slower and sort of the slowest style of attack speed. But it was all like click, attack, and it does its own thing, and that was it really. Now after 2011 and looking at where RuneScape has gone and where it is now, I'm sure I speak for a lot of current old school RuneScape players, where like it's just a completely different game now. The PVM has such a high skill ceiling. There is things that people can do in this game which I wouldn't be able to do in a million years. There is honestly such a high skill ceiling to old school RuneScape, and it all comes down to just how free the combat is. There is no kind of traditional click on a minion, you're locked in on them with, they have a little red ring under them, and you know, you're just locked in on that combat. It's a lot more free. You click, you charge up an attack based off the tick rate, and they have their own tick rate for attacks, and you can kind of run around and do whatever you want. And that's how they've been able to make it such an in-depth system, along with everything else. Obviously, all your prayers are a massive part of it all. The robust spell book is again a massive part of it all. And don't get me wrong, a lot of those things were in the system, you know, before it's before how the game is now. Like prayers, I'm pretty sure were in the system right from the get go. So there was definitely some good concepts there the entire time, but you know, it's really the current team that has been working on RuneScape are the ones that have made it how it is now. Now, if I look at the combat of Brighter Shores, it kind of reminds me of original RuneScape, and I wouldn't be surprised if Andrew kind of looked at it as, hey, I want to create a game that kind of is simple, like the way original RuneScape was, where you can kind of come into this world, pick a do whatever profession you want to work on for the day, um, and everything's just kind of simple. There's no complexities. It's not like a sweaty game. It's kind of it's a bit more like an old man style game where it's just chill and relaxing. And don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that's a bad design philosophy. It just doesn't appeal to me personally as much. I I'm very curious to see where the combat system goes. Uh, Now, for those of you who don't know, with Brighter Shores, it's basically you equip all your gear, you click on a minion, uh, you choose what weapon you want to attack with. So again, you have to click what a weapon you want to start the combat with, and then there's kind of like these little cards that pop up, and you can kind of you can press two and switch to a different weapon on your next attack style and everything like that. You could definitely come up with some complexity there. Like once you've unlocked the bow, you can for example, pick a minion that's far away. You can get 3 shots in before they come to you. Then you can switch to your melee weapon and start attacking them. And there's also a button there for a special attack, so you can then probably do special attack swaps and everything. But my biggest gripe is it's that locking combat style again. It's you click on a monster, you're engaged in the combat, and if you try and move around, it's very slow. It's like you're sort of stepping back, and they're slowly coming towards you, and there's it's definitely not as clean as RuneScape. And I don't know where they can go with that. If you want to get out of combat, the whole area kind of locks off, and if you want to get away from a monster, you have to cast an immunity spell, which takes about 3 seconds, and so you sort of stand there and you got to cast this spell and not die in that meantime, and that's how you sort of disengage from combat. Kind of very old school style, almost kind of like Final Fantasy. It's like a sped up Final Fantasy where rather than menus coming up and you selecting, you do an attack and you do a spell and everything, it's kind of you're doing it in real time. It's like, I might hit a monster, do a fucking DDS spec on it, then I might switch to my staff and I might cast some spells, and then I might switch to this and cast this. That's kind of the feeling I get from it.